At least 20 children died inside these walls at the Phoenix Indian School in Phoenix, Arizona. Some of the 3,100 children who died at similar boarding schools throughout 33 states, designed to force the assimilation of Native American children into white civilization and the Christian religion. These boarding schools were the brainchild of a man named Richard Pratt, whose view towards the Native American was, quote, kill the Indian in him and save the man, and said, in Indian civilization, I am a Baptist because I believe in immersing the Indian in our civilization. And when we get them under, holding them there until they are thoroughly soaked. You can see that attitude in this memorial plaque right behind me that talks about the purpose of this school. It says, quote, the Indian will become an asset or a liability as we cultivate or fail to cultivate his body, mind, and soul with a view of fitting him for an honorable place in our social and economic structure. And the conditions at these schools could often be horrific. There are reports of students being tied to wheelbarrows and beaten, sometimes to death. If they didn't say their prayer rites, they would be forced to kneel on broomsticks. They would be locked up in closets. Sexual abuse was rampant. And many of the children would simply die from malnutrition because they weren't being fed properly, or from disease that spread through these close quarters. 9 Native American children died in 10 days here due to tuberculosis. Native American children at these schools died at a rate of 6.5 times more often than their counterparts in white or even black schools. It's something of a misnomer to call this a school. You see, by 1897, there were 700 Native American children housed here, and yet only 4 teachers. In the first 11 years, not a single one of them would graduate from high school. And by World War II, the literacy rate was only 5%. And that's because they didn't really teach here. Instead, they engaged in something called outing, which is where they took the children out of here and into the rest of Phoenix, Arizona, where they put them to work as cheap labor for the growing Phoenix economy. During World War II, when the United States military needed Navajo and Comanche code talkers, they came to the school to get them. And it was not lost on those students that they had been beaten for speaking Navajo and Comanche here. It would be until just recently that the full extent of the horror of these places was known. And part of that was because what happened to the bodies. Some of these schools had cemeteries, but others, like here in Phoenix, Arizona, did not. But those bodies seldom made them back to their family. Often they were just taken somewhere and buried, and we don't know where that is. This school remained open until 1990 when the Reagan administration turned it down. And it was only last year that President Biden, on behalf of the US government, apologized for what he described as the sins that occurred here. Apologies are necessary and appreciated. They do not begin to address the generational harm and damage done to Native populations by these